Adam Ellis is a well-known social media comic writer and artist. When he moves to a new apartment in New York, strange things happen to him and the ghost of a child named David. Many question his validity, but these events are documented by photos and video, and here I tell you his story. At first, Adam Ellis moved to an apartment in New York and settled there until he started seeing nightmares and strange things talking to him, writing about everything that happened to him on his Twitter account, which he discovered was a ghost named David, and he was trying to kill. And he said he shows up in his dreams, and actually, when David first appears, Adam suffers from sleep paralysis, and David sits in a chair next to him, approaches him, screams sickly and terrifying, and manages to take a picture of him with a surveillance camera at home. In the second dream, a girl appeared to him and told him, "Have you seen my dear David?" Hence, Adam knew the name of the ghost he was chasing, and he said yes, and the girl told him that David would appear in the middle of the night during one of his upcoming nightmares, and he had to ask him 2 questions only once, each beginning with, "Dear David." After that dream, it was a whole week, and David didn't come, but on the first day of the second week, David appeared in one of his dreams. Adam asked him, "What happened to you?" David answered an accident in a store, and Adam asked him, "How did you die?" He said, "The ceiling fell on me," and Adam asked him, "Who pushed it on you?" David's expression turned to anger, as he was only allowed to ask 2 questions. Adam tried to gather information from online newspapers and Google about an incident involving a child named David, but he failed, so he decided to move to an apartment down, but he's still in the same place. Terrifying events stopped for a while, until he noticed that his 2 cats were looking at the door and trying to look under the door in the middle of the night. He approached the door hole and took a photo. The 2 cats stared at the door for about 15 minutes, during which he heard strange sounds, like clapping hands. Adam was curious and wanted to know what was going on behind the door, but at the same time he was afraid. Finally, he overcame his fear and approached the hole again, noticing the movement of one of the woods, and hear a comparison between the first picture he took and the second. Adam returns to bed in total fear and reveals to his followers that the building was previously a large house, but has now been converted into a 2-story building. Days passed without nightmares, as did David, but his 2 cats still looked under the door at midnight every day, and it became more like a routine. So he hoped to download a program on his mobile phone that could record sounds at night. In the morning, the app was able to record about 33 recordings, although only one was important, and you could hear a strange sound resembling electricity. Over the weekend, Adam went out with his friends, bought a camera, and used it to take photos of the room and the house, and everything was fine except when he tried to take a photo of the driveway. It looked dark. Although there were lights, the darkness was still dark, and when he took a picture of the same driveway with his phone, it seemed clear and illuminated. The follower then told him it could be a camera bug and replied, "It's possible, but he'll make sure." So he took another photo of the driveway and a photo of it. Putting his finger on camera, Adam discovered that it was not a camera flaw, as the picture of his finger on camera seemed brighter compared to that of the lobby. Adam came back to bed and slept, and then a horrible nightmare happened. He felt someone holding his wrist hard, and when he woke up, he still felt pain and pressure on his hand. But he thought of a logical explanation and said it was possible because his hands hit the table by the side of the bed, and he was about to leave the building. But when he left, he found that the parking lot next to the building had been closed for 4 years and was open today. When he entered, he was surprised by the presence of the chair on which David was sitting, which Adam viewed as a sign. Adam then connected the camera to his home, and during his vacation in Japan, he kept an anonymous number calling him and blocking the line every time he tried to respond. As he walked around, he drew attention to a statue that appeared to be held in her arms by his mother, who looked a lot like David with his head half smashed and big. Adam was horrified and went to the shrine to write a wish. He wrote, "Please God protect my cats during my absence." But strange things didn't stop. The TV goes off and on fire, even though it's a modern TV. The internet sometimes stops, etc., and so on. In the morning, he woke up and bought some eggs, and as he boiled eggs, he heard a strange noise. Taking a picture through the door hole and finding that it looked a lot like Adam's statue. What he saw yesterday made Adam doubt. Did David follow him to Japan, or was it just fantasy? Adam, who returned to New York shortly after returning to the United States, saw the video and noticed that some chairs and cups were moving on their own. But he was thankful that his cat was still safe. It was a few days, and Adam went to the kitchen and felt that someone was watching him, but still uncomfortable, so he took a picture to make sure. The picture was unclear and dark, and he had to open it, but he was shocked that David was watching him, and he almost lost his correctness. He finished his meal, fed the cat, and soon returned to bed and slept. Another nightmare left him paralyzed, but he eventually woke up hard and felt David next to him. His breath was irregular, sweating, and his heart was beating quickly. He didn't dare sleep anymore. He took a picture of the couch to make sure his feelings were real, and that was the result. To the left, the original image that shows the presence of the child, and to the right, the image with elevation of the lighting level. Terrifying, isn't that, dear listener? A few weeks later, Adam heard voices in the ceiling, ignoring them. When he returned, he found concrete traces on the stairs and discovered that they were coming from the door of the stock in the ceiling. Because the space at the top was small and narrow, he bought a long stick from Amazon and used it to open the ceiling door and took out old shoe, and the followers told him to stop because perhaps David wanted nothing from him, and Adam replied that he didn't think so because David was always chasing him and trying to hurt him. Adam stopped tweeting for a while and returned to say that he was fine and that it was important to visit his family in Montana, and stopped using the internet because he wanted to take a break, but said that he was aware of the existence of a strange child's footprints, and the effects stopped at his home. Adam returned to New York and brought a monk with him, and after the ceremony, the monk left, and the strange events and nightmares stopped for a month. Sometime later, a follower messaged him saying there was a terrifying story for him on Instagram, and when you check, you'll notice that half of Adam's face is deformed. Despite the horror, Adam tried to ignore the problem, but he took caution by turning on the camera before going to bed. Nightmares were scarier and scarier than before, as well as sleep paralysis and very terrifying screams. And in the morning, when he woke up with the camera in his hand to check the pictures he had taken, he found a picture of David sitting on his chest, and Adam realized then that he had to move. After the move, Adam said all the scary things stopped, and he and his cat were at peace, and said he would not overdo things. It is worth mentioning that the story, Dear David, will be made into a movie, produced by Dan Lane, producer of the film It and screenwriter Mike Van Weiss, but the year of release is unknown. Here's another terrifying story. The title of the story is, Did the Boy Actually Appear in the Photo After His Death? When boy Nicholas Macabre went to school as usual on the morning of the 20th of May 2013, he never imagined that day would be his last. Maybe he had a lot on his mind about a video game. His father promised to buy him and said he would find his favorite meal when he returned home, and he would play football with his friends on weekends. But death certainly wasn't in the mind of a young Nicholas. That bad morning, the skies of Moore, a city in Oklahoma, were overcast when Scott drove his son Nicholas to school. Weather news predicted storms, but no one talked about tornadoes. If people knew that the hurricane was going to hit their city that morning, they wouldn't have taken their young children to that weak elementary school that lacked a shelter that protected students from natural disasters because there was no money to build such a shelter. So the powerful hurricane that suddenly hit the city that morning caused the roof and walls of that school to fall effortlessly on the students' heads. 7 students died, and dozens were injured as a result. 9-year-old Nicholas Macabre was one of the young men killed. His death came as a major shock to his family, who were unable to understand what had happened, as the happy child, who had been laughing and playing before their eyes a few hours earlier, lay in a coffin waiting to be buried now. The family is deeply saddened. But about 40 days after Nicholas's death, specifically the 4th of July, coincided with Independence Day, U.S. independence from Britain, a public holiday in the U.S. during which a major fireworks celebration took place. Scott received a wonder call from his brother, who asked him to come immediately to his home. Scott headed to his brother's house, and the brother showed him a photo taken a few hours ago. And the photo showed his little girl Madison playing with firecrackers in the garden of the house. And it didn't take long until his tears started falling profusely. This is Nicholas. It appears clearly in the photo and stands right behind Madison. The photo story quickly went viral and reached the media. In the photo, Madison plays with firecrackers when a faint shadow appears behind her. Scott insists he is the ghost of his son Nicholas. In contrast, the doubters see that the fantasy belongs to Madison himself and was caused by the shaking of the camera when the photo was taken. They can say what they want. I'm sure Nicholas is watching us. Scott, Nicholas's father, replied to those who questioned the photo, adding, "When my brother first saw the photo, I felt his hair standing up, and at first I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But my son Nicholas loved the 4th of July holiday and playing with firecrackers. This fantasy clearly does not belong to Madison's niece. Obviously, there are 2 people in the painting, or rather, 1 person and a ghost." The photo believers say that the imagination shown in the photo is certainly not the imagination or reflection of Madison's image. Facial features, skin tone, and even haircut are completely different. Obviously, the imagination belongs to a boy, not a girl. What do you think, dear listener? Is this really Nicholas's baby in the picture? They say that children are loved by God and that their clean souls continue to fly freely in heaven, or is he his wife? It's just a reflection of a girl's image because of poor image quality.